We're going to be talking today about resources that you need, not just for the career paper, but that can help you overall. So I'm going to do a screen share. And the first thing we're going to start off with is looking at how we access the STARS guide. If you remember from the assignment sheet, the STARS guide is required for every paper. You need to include the first page of the STARS guide at the end of your essay after the works cited page. But what is the STARS guide? What do we need? Well, we start at the Coastal Alabama homepage. And we go to students. Come on, you. There we go. And one of your selections under students is going to be STARS. All caps, S-T-A-R-S. Okay. So what do we do with the STARS guide? Well, we first have to get there and put in our information. So where is our link? Oh, I don't see reds that well, so the website that has the links that are in red doesn't help me out much. I have to kind of scan over it. Okay, so you click on the link to getting the guide. Now you do need to get the official STARS guide. And some of you may be saying to yourselves, I don't plan on going to a four-year school. Why do I need the STARS guide? Well, you need the STARS guide, one, because it's required for this assignment. Two, you need it because you never know. For example, you may be planning on going into nursing. Well, I just want to be a nurse. 5 years from now, you may decide you want to be a supervisor. A lot of hospitals require that you have a bachelor's degree of some sort to be a supervisor. More and more states and more hospitals are going to requiring nurses having a bachelor's to work there. So even if you're not planning on getting a bachelor's now, find a degree that is close to what you want. Now, I don't know if it's changed, but physical therapy tends to be one that's problematic. You may want to research what four-year degree a physical therapy program wants you to have before you enter it, and just go with that. Probably something like biology or anatomy and physiology, something like that. Exercise science and the like. So we click on official guide, and then you give your situation. What's our situation? Well, currently you're at a two-year public community college, which is the one in green right here. We click on that. Then it's going to ask for your information, your current situation. Now, for this, I've done this several times, so I create a fake address. If you want them to be able to send you text messages, this would be from recruiters at various four-year schools. So if you don't know what four-year school you want to go to yet, but you know you have to go to a four-year school, you might want to click this. Chances are, if they text you, you can have an opt-out of the text messages. In addition to that, you have to put the college you're currently attending, which is Coastal, and select your major. Now I'm going to select English because, not only because I'm an English person, but I know it's going to be available at multiple schools and gives us more options. Okay, so we continue to step 3. Then we pick our top 2 transfer institutions. And during football season, this tends to be a little bit more disputed, but I put just Alabama and Auburn to avoid any snarking. When you plan on attending, now, one thing we do have to notice, I know it's hard to see on the screen, but at the bottom here, there's 2 things that are already checked. Yes. One of them is I grant permission for STARS or the member institutions to send me information about their programs. If you don't want to get a bunch of flyers in the mail, make sure you deselect this, okay? I want to give people a heads up on this because since I'm requiring that you do this. I don't want you to get inundated with mail if you're just looking up your STARS guide for the assignments. Okay, so I'm going to deselect both of these. The other one's the consent to having your information. They're just keeping statistical data on how many people get a STARS guide, say, on biology or what have you. Then you click on Get the Guide, and it's going to pump out your STARS guide. Now, before we take a look at the STARS guide, I want to show you this first page, because this first page with your official transfer guide at the top, your name and your address and your email and all that stuff, that's the page that you need to include with your paper. And you only need to include this first page. Please, please, please only include this first page, for the love of God. Only include this first page, because what happens is two things. One, your paper ends up being 15 pages if you include the whole thing. Two, Turnitin thinks that 90% of your paper is plagiarized because it's seen STARS guides before, okay? Just include, copy and paste from the top of this page down to the beginning of the guides, just to right here, just one page. I just need to make sure that you got an official guide and it's you, okay? All right, off of that soapbox. How do we use the STARS guide? Well, basically, that is answered by what the STARS guide exists for. The STARS guide is a contract between the community colleges of Alabama and the state institutions and some of the private institutions, saying, if you take this class here, English 101, whatever it might be, it will transfer and we'll give them credit at our institution, okay? So what we can use this guide for is to see not only what we'll transfer, but what classes we might take within a given major. So if we're trying to decide between one major or another, we can actually look at what classes we have to take and kind of pick out which one is going to be more interesting to us. So we can look through all the areas, we can see what we need to graduate from here, but also to graduate from the four-year school. But not only that, here's a cool thing about the STARS guide. Coastal does what's called a reverse transfer. Say you do 2 years here and transfer to another school, but you didn't quite finish your associate's degree here. Well, if you take the classes at your four-year school, they would finish the degree here, as long as it's less than 20 units. You can send your transcript here and apply for a reverse transfer. What does that mean? It means you can get an associate's degree by taking your classes at a four-year school. What's cool about that? Well, life happens. Say you do your junior year at a four-year school and you were smart, and after your first semester, you sent your transcript back to Coastal and got your associate's degree in a reverse transfer. Something happens in your life and you have to leave school for a year and work. Do you think it's going to be easier to get a job if you have an associate's degree or just some college with the degree? Because it shows that you finished something. You never know what life's going to bring you, and filling out some paperwork can get you an extra degree. It's definitely worthwhile. Okay. The other thing on the STARS guide that I want to show you is if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, which is called the transfer page, the Area 5 page. What's cool about this is you can go and look at the school you're planning on transferring to and seeing what classes you're going to take there, what they recommend you take in your first 2 years. You can actually get a degree plan and say, oh, they say by the end of my freshman year, I should have taken this class, and this class. I'm missing one. I can take that over the summer, okay? So for example, we'll just do AUM. Area 5 page, and this is, we'll look up English since that's the degree we're using. College of Sciences, Liberal Arts and Sciences. English should be here. We click on English. And it gives you a degree plan, what classes we need to take from a 2-year school. how many credit hours we need from those areas, what classes qualify, who we can contact. Look at this. It has your advisor at AUM. You can email this person and say, hey, look, what do I need to take? Here's my transcript. What am I missing? This guide really allows you to plan ahead to be successful at the four-year school. Okay. So any questions about the STARS guide, how we use it, what needs to be in the paper, anything like that? Go ahead. You can use either, especially if you're asking for information from contact information from the school. I would use the email that you use the most often, especially since we're going into the summer. If you're not taking summer classes and probably won't check your class email, or excuse me, your school email over the summer, then I would use the email that you use most often. Other questions? Okay. Next thing I want to show you is some of the things that our library has available to us through the library services page. This is my Canvas dashboard. We all have one. If you're taking an online class and haven't gone through the survival guide to e-learning, which has a bunch of stuff on how Canvas works and how you do like Canvas tests and things like that, I would suggest you do that. But library services page is where we're going to get to a lot of our resources. Now remember, for my classes, I have an approved research material policy. Okay, approved research material policy, which states that you can use anything from one of the library databases, what I'm going to show you now, or a .edu or .gov without getting prior permission. Everything else, .com, .org, .biz, .net, you have to get prior permission to use. Okay, so they're not verboten or forbidden to use a .com. You just have to get approval first to use it, because I want to make sure if you're using websites that you're using good ones. Okay, but if you use a library database, if it comes from Britannica or Academic Search Premier, EBSCO, or anything like that, you don't have to get prior permission to use it. Okay, so that kind of saves you a step in the research process. So let's take a look at what we have here for our library. First and foremost, actual books that our library has. I know that they're getting fewer and farther between. However, I think that this is worthwhile. Okay, so the library catalog. I'm going to use the same search term in all of these just to keep uniformity. So if you're planning on going into nursing, you get a little bit of an advantage. I'm just putting nursing into the library catalog. Pressing enter. Come on, you. There it goes. And we've got 928 results, which isn't that much. Generally speaking, in a search, you want to try and get it down to about 300 if you can, but 900 is not that many to go through. Now, this is going to show you stuff at all campuses if you don't narrow it down. Okay, so there's the Monroeville Library, Bay Minette, Fairhope, what have you, which you can get interlibrary loan. It just takes time. But if we want to just focus on the library on the campus that we're on, we narrow it down to just Bruton. Let's see how much that reduces our results. Down to 300. Okay, so that's much better. But, you know, this is a nursing textbook that we have available to us, how to succeed in nursing school before, during, and after. That actually might be a really good resource if you're going into nursing. But the point is, it's going to show you the call number. It's going to show you if it's like, say, a DVD, where you get that in the library. And if you're confused, write down the information for the book that you want and go to a librarian. They're there to help. That's why they're at the desk. You know, and they're friendly and willing to work with you. So if you're not really familiar with how to find something in the library, ask a librarian. That's what they're there for. All right, so that's finding a book, but I know that most of you are going to be using the online resources. And one of our best spots for that is going to be the Alabama Virtual Library, which you can access as long as your server is in the state of Alabama. So you can access it from home through your Canvas page if you want to. You might be able to do it if you're in another state, but I think it's tricky. I haven't tried it from home recently because I do live in another state. Okay, so we're looking for our resources. Elementary school, no. Middle school, no. High school. College and university, you can either click here. I prefer to click all resources just to see everything that we have available to us. Okay. For the career essay, one of the things that I like to show first is the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's a peer-reviewed encyclopedia. It's very good. But the question is, since we have 6 of them, which one do we use? Well, use the Britannica Academic. This is the one that's going to be geared toward college students. Okay. Now, how do we use the Britannica on our career essay? Well, for the career essay, there's a reason why chapter 12, which is the definition chapter, is part of the reading. We have to define for our audience, which is other college students, what our career does. You know, we've all dealt with nurses. We've all seen restaurant owners. You've probably met an engineer or two, or a teacher. But there's lots of stuff that happens behind the scenes that we don't necessarily know. You know, back in the 50s, when you were in elementary school, my dad tells me this all the time. You know, if you go by the teacher's lounge, what do you think it smelled like? Cigarette smoke. If a teacher came out, you know, there'd be like a plume of smoke coming out of the teacher's lounge. You know, what's going on in the teacher's lounge is what's interesting, okay? And the stuff that we need to know. For example, if you're going to be a nurse, you're probably going to do more writing in your career than an English major, because you probably write the equivalent to one of our essays every night when you're doing charting. It's just kind of the life of a nurse, or certainly a significant amount. And your livelihood is based on that charting, right? You're being a nurse and you write something down incorrectly, or if you get to note something, if there's a lawsuit later, you can be held accountable for it. All right, so we're going to just use the same search term for the sake of consistency. Medical professions, first thing that comes up. And we can use this just for a definition of what it does, history of it, if we wanted to include that in our paper. But another thing that's really cool about Britannica, and I have to find it, I believe it's up here at the top. We have a cite function, or if we click on that, it's going to, now this isn't perfect, but if we look here, what's the citation for the article? Now it's not in Times New Roman 12-point font, it's not double spaced, it's, you know, missing a few things, but it gives us the basic citation information. So that's valuable to us as well. In addition, we can look up related articles to this profession. Say you want to be a nurse midwife, the history of being a midwife. Also, we can look up primary sources and ebooks. The sources for this article are going to pop up right here, and we can find other sources through our sources. That's a really neat trick that I didn't learn until I was in graduate school. But if you have an article on something and they have a works cited, a reference, or a bibliography, look at their sources. They already did some work for you. You might find an article in their sources that you could use or search for that's going to be pertinent to your paper. Are any questions about the Britannica before I move on? Okay, back to all resources. Most of the databases are similar, so I'm just going to show you how Academic Search Premier works. This is also sponsored by EBSCOhost. EBSCO does the programming in essence for a lot of these search things. So the way that you search is going to be similar. I clicked on Academic Search Premier. I'm going to use our same search term. And that gave us 150,000 results. That's too many. Okay, so we need to look for ways that we can narrow down this search. So on the left side of the screen, you're going to see a bunch of options. First thing I'm going to do is just limit it to the last 10 years. I pressed return. How does that narrow it for us? Cut it in half. That's pretty good. Again, we want to get our searches down to roughly 300 or so. Because if you think about it, if there's 20 results per page, that's only 15 pages to go through. That would take maybe an hour. That's not the end of the world when we're doing research, okay? Less would be better, of course, but 300 should be probably your goal. All right, so we're looking at just the last 10 years. Now we need to look at different types. Well, I want to only look at academic journals because I know those are going to be reliable. So that gets us down to 40,000. And then we have other things that we can reduce it with, like subject, publication, so on and so forth. So let's narrow it by subject because there's a lot of different types of nursing. Say we're looking for articles on how much they make, economic aspects. This gets it down to 438, which is going to be enough for the purposes of this search, but you probably would want to narrow it down a little bit more. You could use like pediatric nursing in your search term or oncology, something like that. Okay, so once we have our articles and we're taking a look at them, there's several different things we want to pay attention to. One is all this stuff on the right-hand side. You can save the article, you can email it to yourself. If you have a printer available, you can just print it out. I've always preferred to print things out so I can write on them. On the left-hand side, we have two different ways that we can view this article. One is HTML. HTML is just the text. Okay, it's just the words in the article. There's also a PDF file. What's the difference? Well, a PDF, generally speaking, is like a photocopy of the article as it appeared in the magazine or journal. So as you see here, we get to see what's in bold, what's in bigger print. What are they emphasizing? Do they have charts? This is how it actually appeared in the journal. We have footnotes at the bottom, and like I mentioned earlier, say we have a statistical chart. This wouldn't appear in an HTML text. But if we look at the bottom, which I assume it's going to have, references. This is what I mean by letting them do the work for you sometimes. You can look through their references and say, hey, that article looks interesting. I'm going to search that author and that title in Academic Search Premier. In all likelihood, it's going to pop up. And you can access it. Okay, so research is a community. Okay, do it together with a professor or a nurse or somebody who wrote this article that's a professional that's going to help you out. So, search terms, narrow your search terms. Once you're in the article, look for PDF if you have it. If you don't, HTML is fine. The last thing I want to show you on here is a cool function. Again, they have the citation function, the various ways that you can cite it. What are we using? MLA, which presents it here. Now, this isn't perfect. Again, it's not double space, it's not in Times New Roman 12-point font, but it does give us the stuff in the correct order. Okay? Questions? All right, a couple more things I want to show you. So that's the library resources. Another thing that's career essay specific is the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Occupational Outlook Handbook. That's what you should search when you're doing your Google search. Occupational Outlook Handbook. Why? Because most of those .coms that you want to start with get their information from this. So let's go ahead and get it from the source. Okay, so I searched that, and this is from the US Department of Labor, and this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And this shows you a breakdown of whatever career that you're looking for. So I'm going to put our search term in here. And I know this calls it registered nurse, that's why I put that in there. We found our career. Here's a cool thing. You have a minimum of 4 sources on this paper. Notice all the tabs at the top. Each one of these tabs is a separate source because it's a separate article. Okay, so this gives you multiple articles right away. But the nice thing about this is it gives us what they do. If you can read it at the top, type of work environment, how you get there, the average pay. You know, for here it says the median pay is $70,000 per year. You're not going to get that anywhere near Escambia County, Alabama. You know, probably start about $35,000. But you know, this is the median pay nationally. Especially if you want to be a travel nurse, you might expect this type of payment. Typical entry-level education, bachelor's degree, work experience, number of jobs, and so on. Now, a couple things I want you to be cautious about here. Job outlook. It's growing by 15% in the next 10 years. There's going to be almost 500,000 new jobs. But we have to be critical of any statistic. If there's 500,000 new nursing jobs coming open in the next 10 years, but 750,000 new nurses expected, then there's really not that many jobs available, are there? It's still competitive. And really, you know, if you want to get a good job right out of school in nursing, you probably have to be in top 3 in your class. You know, if you don't want to work at a nursing home overnight, that sort of thing. Or maybe you do. They need good nurses there too. Some other things I want to show you. At the end of this, we have the More Info button. Like the Britannica, we have additional resources. They have done research for you. Contacts for more information, American Nurses Association, Society of Registered Nursing, Johnson & Johnson, all sorts of cool links here that will help you with your research. So for the career essay in particular, I would advise that you start your research with the Occupational Outlook Handbook. Because if you go to say like salary.com or something like that for your salary, the first question I'm going to highlight that on your paper when I'm grading it and say, why didn't you use the OOH? Because that's probably where salary.com got their information in the first place. Go to the source. And this is a .gov, so you don't need approval for it. Okay? Questions on this? Okay, we're going to dive into the documentation exercise assignment. And I want to make sure that we know a good web resource to get information on how to cite correctly. The online writing lab at Purdue University is my go-to for MLA stuff because it's very user-friendly, it's very clear, and easy to use. You, of course, have chapter 19 and 20 of your textbook that I sent you in a PDF file. And you have to use the PDF file for chapters 19 and 20 because the one in your textbook is the old version. It's not the one you're supposed to be using, okay? So just put in Al Purdue or Al Purdue MLA in a Google search, and it will take you to the MLA formatting and style guide at the online writing lab at Purdue. The cool thing about this is it breaks it down for all the stuff you need. So say you're citing a book with one author. You can look on the left-hand side of the screen. Books, MLA Works Cited page. Books, I'm looking for a book with one author. You scroll down, and the thing about this that I want you to take note of is you have to have a rudimentary knowledge of how this stuff works. Everybody has to look up how to cite sources, okay? I double check online if I'm putting together a works cited page, okay? Most people, 99% of people have to look this stuff up. What I'm expecting of you on the career essay is to put the work in to look up how to do stuff correctly, okay? And this is probably your best resource online. The textbook chapters that I sent you are a good resource on, I think it's about 440 of chapter 20 in the PDF file I sent you. There's a table of contents that lists the type of sources that are in that textbook, okay? So how do we use this? Well, we look for things like the basic book formatting. This is what we need for a basic book. Last name of the author, first name, title of the book, city of publication, publisher, publication date. With MLA citation, we go with the information that we have. If the book doesn't have the author, you go to the next thing, which is the title of the book, okay? With an internet source, if you have an article from a website, but you don't have an author, you start with the title of the article, okay? You start with whatever information you have. Alrighty, so if you look here, book with one author, last name, first name, publisher, city if you have it, and the date, okay? So that's it for this video, but what I'm going to do is get you guys started on the documentation exercise. If you're listening to this in the online class, you have something slightly different that you're doing.